Welcome to Undaunted Weekly Recap. I'm Star Smart, and Onyo Palette is here as well.
Well, this week has been everything amazing and successful. We had the International Press Conference, after which was the post-conference analysis by members of the interim government. A lot was said, and one of which is, regardless of the interest of groups and fractions, there is unity in purpose.
And just in case you missed out on the week's bulletin, well, here's a recap we'll bring to you right after the break.
The media greatly influences society. They inform people about what is happening. It permeates people's lives by creating their own criteria and opinions. In this way, the media moves the masses, creating different social movements.
For over 60 years, the people of Ambazonia were deprived of such privileges. The privilege to enhance their own criteria and opinion. They have suffered cultural genocide for 6 long decades, but not in this age and not with Undaunted ABC Amber News on board.
You must understand that wars are fought and won in the media. The speed of the revolution on Ambazonia's quest for freedom cannot be explained without highlighting the diligent use of the media.
Franco-Cameroon colonizers, among other strategic moves, weaponized the media against Ambazonia for so long, and they continue to do so even today. The question would be, how much do the oppressed people of Ambazonia need to counter the media rage?
Indeed, how much more is required to stop the genocide? The carnage in Ambazonia didn't start today. In 1961, 1972, 1984, and 1992, Ambazonians were slaughtered in huge numbers and help was not forthcoming. Why? Because the oppressor was the piper in the media.
The good news is we have what it takes to dictate the pace.
Right now, ABC Amber TV is taking advantage of the wonders of multimedia aggressively
to inform the misinformed and disinformed with Undaunted and other revolutionary programs bringing to the news untold stories.
Most importantly, to win the media war by taking ABC Amber TV into every multimedia platform.
In a word, where the importance of storytelling can never be overemphasized, Ambazonians has to tell her own story, not the other way round.
And like we say it always, Ambazonia must narrate her story accurately. We can do this together, you know, right? You are just a click away. Visit our website at www.abcambertv.com, and the steps are quite simple.
With just a click on the website, you can become a club member with so many benefits.
You can also make a one-time donation, advertise and showcase your goods and services at the marketplace on the website.
That was easy, right? You're welcome on board.
And thank you for opting for the winning team.
You're welcome back. Now, while the talk of looking for an ideal means to end the ongoing war in southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, the colonial military of the La Republic de Cameroon is still on the ground. The colonial military is having fun killing innocent Ambazonians. Well, this week we told you that while there's a softer ground for the beer thugs in funeral ground, they stormed another funeral ground, killing two. This time around in Bamenda and Jimafo neighborhood, two innocent young and dynamic Ambazonians on Sunday, January 29th, were killed at a funeral by the Colonial La Republic de Cameroon military. Mourners were surprised to see La Republic de Cameroon invade the burial ground in their numbers after coming all the huge crannies grabbed two young boys.
Well, also this week, we discussed the differences between the Swiss-led international mediation and the Canadian monologue. The Swiss talks was a genuine mediation, and initially, we could say that La République du Cameroun was ready for the Swiss talks, but eventually pulled out. But the Canadian process, it was not endorsed by any actor of the international community, like the case with the Swiss talks. No Canadian envoy was received in Yaoundé, like was the case for the Swiss process, where the Swiss envoys were received several times. We could say that the Canadian process was entirely sponsored by La République du Cameroun, unlike the Swiss process that was sponsored by Canada as a neutral party.
Well, also news that got to Undaunted this week, Monday, says the Colonial La Republic de Cameroon government is launching recruitment of 1,000 youths to fight fake news and hate speech through the internet. The very weapon the colonial government used to deprive Ambazonians of it at the onset of the genocidal war that was ongoing. Now, the La Republic de Cameroon government is seeking to recruit 1,000 young people who will volunteer to fight against fake news, hate speech, and other uncivil behaviors online.
All right, now, meanwhile, in a related development, 5 Cameroonian nationals have been arrested for allegedly planning to kidnap a Nigerian. The incident is said to have happened in the Adamawa state of Nigeria, according to Sahara reporters. It was learned that the incident happened on Sunday. The command, upon receiving the information, designed a security ring around the target and luckily engaged the suspected kidnappers. So while La République du Cameroun is planning to engage young men to be social media savvy, others are being kidnappers.
Well, on Tuesday, it was the Ambazonia International Press and Post Conference. In a post-international press conference organized by the interim government that was held on the 31st of January, we had Barrister Tim Besiar, Barrister Fu Johnson, Dr. Patience Abiedu, and Lady Callister as guest analysts. Barrister Tim Besiar highlighted that there are 3 important factors to consider. The first is where we are coming from. He mentioned that from 1956, it was the decolonization process, while in 1961, La République du Cameroun occupied us. Now, the people understand that we are only a peaceful people when the war was declared on us, and against all odds, what unites us all, irrespective of groups or fraction, is unity of purpose. Now, the IG, led by Dr. Sako, commands the respect and the authorities of the majority of Ambazonia, and it has given to him and his IG so far. Barrister Tim also added that he will like the United States to do more than talking, maybe help in appointing a negotiator.
All right, now, until the next point, he said, where are we going to? The president said to the press to publicly ask those factions or groups who they are and what they want. They all want the freedom of Ambazonia. And that's the important focus. And that is the important focus. And it clearly shows that we all are united. And what is happening to us now? The killing of Ambazonians in Bamenda, Douala, Yaoundé, everywhere and anywhere. Burning of houses, kidnapping, not participating in the Swiss-led process. The press got the message. Houses and villages get burnt, people killed on a regular basis, and the president reminded the press about the day the women, youths who went on a peaceful protest were killed. La République du Cameroun has no good intentions to call off the war.
Well, the third point is who are we and what is the problem? The problem is not the fact that there are several groups. The president explained that we are all united in purpose. Now, in other conflicts in all over the world, conflicts of groups are usually part of any war. But, we know and he is sure that all the different groups want freedom and suggested that the press could confirm these for themselves as well. Barrister Tim mentioned that their president, what the president said about the Swiss-led process, which is the fact that La République du Cameroon walked away, and also because the Swiss delegates needed a Cameroonian visa, which they didn't get. Now, then to the Canadian process, the press had mentioned that 12 people were to represent Yaoundé. One was Anglophone, meaning we would have just dialogued with ourselves. That's also the reason why he refers to it as a monologue. Well, the president told us in Resolution 1608, the La République du Cameroon rejected us in 1961, and so there is no need for any form of referendum.
All right, now according to Dr. Patience Abdedu and Lady Casey, the ladies hoped that the pressmen who came for the briefing would tell the world about the war, not crisis, happening in La République du Cameroun to show and tell the world the untold stories the right way. It has been a step the interim government has taken to put our story in the world. They understand the war, the actors in the field, through the questions asked by the press. You can agree that they know more of the stories than we actually taught.
All right, now, according to Barrister Frujon, so the press in Africa and the world, he says they know these war stories more than we even think that they know. Now, he mentioned that companies drilling oil from Ambazonia illegally, that they should be informed that they will all account for the illegal oils they have stolen from the 1st of October 2017 till whenever they are asked to pay. Now, he says La République du Cameroon is using the oil more than the people of Ambazonia, which should not be accepted. Now, Barrister Fro highlighted that the reporters from BBC asked an important question. He asked, why is the Pope talking about Ukraine and why can't the Pope not talk about Southern Cameroon? He says, is it that the Pope does not see or know what the problem is?
Well, also the question that came from Brazil and South America, where he asked about the 64 countries voting for independence. What is it the United Nations doing? What the United Nations is doing about it, and why is Cameroon insisting on giving Ambazonians war? Well, Barrister Fru added that the world political body knows our cases, but they are burying their heads on the ground because it has to do with the Gulf of Guinea. This has a lot to do with world peace. It has to do with humanity. The pre and post international press conference was moderated and anchored by Mr. Ta.
Well, on Thursday, we told you that the hikes in the prices of basic commodities being observed in the Republic of Ambazonia is as a result of the bad government of La République du Cameroun. La République du Cameroon's government has crippled home industries with dangerous taxation policies on small and medium-sized enterprises. Now, the increase in the price of diesel and petrol will normally have a proportional consequence on the prices of foodstuff and basic commodities. Now, due to the fact that transporters going for a more costly fuel will intend to include the price of transporting goods, business persons will, on the other hand, raise and increase the prices of goods proportionately to the price of transportation.
Well, a communique of 31st January from the Colonial Prime Minister's office stated that the basic salary of a civil servant will experience a 5.2 increase. The same communique indicates a more than 20% increase in the price of fuel. Well, we wondered how proportionate is a 5.2% raise to a 20% increase in fuel. Well, how can a civil servant use 5.2% to solve that problem of 20%?
Right after the death of Martini Zogo, reports reaching the media in La République du Cameroun, it disclosed that there was a list of another or other journalists to follow. Meanwhile, there are other journalists being tortured silently within the police, gendarmerie cells, and secret services, others in detention, while many are on the run. Well, Undaunted gathered that Colonial La République du Cameroun Governor Adolphe Lele Afrique made a call recently during the award of medals to some occupier Colonial La République du Cameroun officers in Bamenda local government area for their patriotic fight in killing Ambazonians. Well, he says in his words, says, I'm tasking them to secure the region and prepare for the awaited senatorial election in calm all over the northwest region. Now, that's what Adolphe Lele said.
All right, also this week we brought you General Transporter, who has been a thorn in the flesh of the Colonial La République du Cameroun's military and sending many of them to a land of no return, who has been reported by unconfirmed sources this week to have fallen 24 hours before his suspected demise. He gathered the population in what was like a farewell speech, emphasizing that he and his boys have given up their lives to free the motherland. The terrorist La République du Cameroon's military are fighting a losing battle, and it is time they turn to their superiors and charge them to end the war, he said in that video.
All right, let's go to the FAPA story. Now, all right, on the FAPA amongst the Ambazonia Restoration Forces, it's been getting hotter with every present day. Commanders and generals have been doing what they know how to do best, keeping the forces of occupation out of Ambazonian territory. Now, here is a video from these defenders of homeland on the 31st of January 2023, showing their feat as they just demobilized and dismantled the vehicle of the bees. Now, let's see that video.
All right, now while we get the video, we have this sad news from announcing the death of 3 people who were killed in Uncha village this week by a group of armed Fulani people on Saturday, 28th of January 2023. Bororo people stormed the village, burning down houses. 1 person was burnt in the house, then 2 others were shot with guns, making them a total of 3 persons dead. Many houses were reported burned down, so that is the sad story that we got from the village. Really a sad story, so Fintem is bereaved. Now we'll move on to the fresh stories of the day after this break.
We the people, ABC Amba TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa. With untold stories, Africa's best. We the people, ABC Amba TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa. With untold stories, Africa's best. We the people, ABC Amba TV.
Well, Undaunted reported 2 days ago on the sit-down strike of drivers of the Bamenda Ekok stretch. Now, they are on day 3 of the strike, and the colonial authorities are still making statements on how to move or remedy the situation. Well, Undaunted Saturday made another stop at the Bamenda Base Park to see if the drivers have moved from their position, as the colonial authorities are paying a deaf ear to their plight.
Now, the drivers, more composed and relaxed, hinted that in addition to the wanton extortion they do suffer from the hands of the oppressors, the colonial La République du Cameroon, so-called forces of law and other, they are equally vexed with the derogatory language these thugs throw on drivers. The worry is with the careless attitude of the colonial La République du Cameroon authorities around. Driving is what puts food on the table for the drivers and caretakers for the upkeep of their children. And after being down for 3 days with a genuine protest, nobody seems to care. Is it because these colonial authorities don't care about the welfare of these suffering drivers? Or is it that, according to them, the drivers have not suffered enough?
Drivers plying the Bamenda Ekok Road, also known as the Bamenda Enugu Corridor, have been on a sit-down strike for 3 days now against extortion and hate speech, amongst other forms of human rights abuses, which they say are meted on them by the colonial La République du Cameroon terrorist security forces. Now, according to the drivers, after talking with Undaunted, apart from being forced at gunpoint to cough up huge sums to satisfy the ever-increasing hunger for money of the colonial agents, the terrorist soldiers stationed along the road has been calling them names and using hate languages on the drivers. Now, according to one driver, he says, we pay more than 30,000 francs CFA each to these soldiers, pay a day from Bamenda to Ekok, just from Bamenda town to my 90 in Soba, a distance of less than 4 kilometers. There are 8 security checkpoints, and we spend 8,000 francs CFA each every blessed day. Now he goes on to say in Bali, there are 2 control points, and we drop 2,000 francs CFA each. After 2 p.m., they will tell you it's a new team, meaning we still have to give these said people the same amount of money. Now, this is what the driver said.
Now, another area where the drivers say they are not ready to accept is the use of what they describe as hate languages against them. Quote, when we resist giving them money, they will threaten us and say if we're angry, we should drop our car keys, get weapons, and join Amber. This is hateful language against us. We're not against security checkpoints. We're against extortion, he says, hate language and other forms of inhumane treatments on us. Another driver indicated. They say taking care of their families and sending their kids to school has been negatively affected because all that they make ends in the pockets of colonial uniform robbers. The drivers have appealed to the colonial authorities to help them breathe again by looking into the situation at hand. They state that the amount of money they give to the colonial soldiers on the way is making it difficult for them to even pay for their car documents.
Well, it is still not certain if the local La Republic du Cameroon colonial authorities will listen to their worries this time around or not, even given that the drivers say they have been crying for years, but no one seems to care. All right, I'm moving on to another fresh report for today. The Ambazonia Restoration Forces under President Samuel Ikomesako are becoming more and more coordinated in the fight for the liberation of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia.
So on Tuesday, January 31st, they carried out a twin attack on Boyi and Ngoketunje counties. A high degree of professionalism in the attack stems from the fact that the thugs were attacked on the same day and at the same time, meaning that though in 2 different counties, the communication between the home front fighters is superb.
While the president of the Ambazonian interim government, Dr. Samuel Ikomesako, is gaining more diplomatic awakening away from home, the Ambazonian Restoration Forces on the home front are becoming stronger and more skillful every day. Even if diplomacy is delaying to cause Beer's soldiers to quit Ambazonia, the exploit of the Ambazonian Restoration Forces over them on the ground will certainly force them to flee.
Undaunted is reporting with certainty a twin attack of the Amazonian Restoration Forces on Tuesday, January 31st, 2023, sending mainly La Republic du Cameroon terrorists to the land of no return. La Republic du Cameroon colonial authorities have decided this time to be hiding their losses, certainly because they want those colonial soldiers still to be deployed to Ambazonia to know what awaits the moment they step foot on Ambazonian soil.
Well, on January 31st, the Ambazonia Restoration Forces in Bui, with the use of a rocket launcher, immobilized the La Republic du Cameroon terrorist military armored car. At the time of the attack, FM Sagon was carrying out a similar attack in Bamising in Ngokentuja County. The result of these 2 attacks was the same. Any La Republic du Cameroon soldier stepping into Ambazonia knows that they are stepping into a battleground with the Ambazonia Restoration Forces that are backed by the spirit of their ancestors who are ready to pay their fare out of this world.
And now until the final reports for tonight, it seems to be impossible being an honest journalist in La Republic du Cameroon, something we've brought to you severally. As a journalist in La Republic du Cameroon who wants to stay alive, you're not expected to ever mention, whisper, or at the height publish anything on lines 57, 65, 94 of the budget of La Republique du Cameroon. It is a cardinal sin to mention these budget heads. A mere whisper about these budget heads brings that sentence.
Well, the following journalist will tell you that one Sebastian Ebele talked about the budget heads was well beaten and dumped 36 kilometers away from Yaoundé and left to die. When he miraculously survived, was later arrested, detained and tortured in an official ghetto. Paul Tuchar talked about lines 57, 64, 94 and was kidnapped, tortured to near death and again dumped in the outskirts of Yaoundé. He was rescued. Today, he's still pursued by shadowy figures and lives in hiding permanently on the run. David Ebutu was tortured and sent to jail for daring where angels were scared. Lines 57, 65, and 94. Today he is silent and meek and humble like a lamb. Bibi Ngota was tortured, sent to jail, and poisoned to death. Martinez Zogo, the latest. This one will go into the Guinness Book of Records as one who was administered the cruelest death of the 21st century. Even Hitler's, who carried out the Holocaust and anti-Semitic massacres, would envy the agents of darkness in Yaoundé. Now,
Anyways, there's one other case that still leaves us at undoubted perplexed. Coincides or part of the above pattern, Senator Kemende was murdered by La Republic to Cameroon's regime thugs just after he dared to mention same lines 57, 65, and 94 of the budget on the Senate floor. The following questions can lead him to classify him under the same group of Matthias. One, the identities of the fellows who killed Senator Kemende and were later killed have never been released. Who were they? Where did they come from? The corpses were never paraded, which is the modus operandi of the system. Every Cameroonian is supposed to have an identity. Who are the killers of Kemende? Who were later killed? Until some of these questions are answered, we will suppose the gang was a foreign gang brought to Bamenda local government area for that purpose. They did the job and then stayed longer to do other 30 jobs to maximize their profits. It is absolutely irresistible to deny a pattern and to pinpoint the key suspect in all these killings. The common denominator, lines 57, 65, and 94. And if you want to stay alive, now people are advising that you stay away from these budget heads. They were created under miscellaneous unforeseen to enrich the kingmakers in a corrupt La Republic du Cameroon.
all right, and with that report, we've come to the end of the news recap for today. Now, coming up next is
Self-defense briefings.
We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa. With untold stories, Africa's best. We the people, ABC Amber TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa. With untold stories, Africa's best.